Good morning. I'm Ben Ayers, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Terry Exec Ed Center and for our Terry Third Thursday programming. Let me thank the Alumni Board for organizing today's event and this entire series. Also, please join me in thanking our corporate sponsor, Synovus, as well as our media sponsor, WABE Atlanta Public Broadcasting. So please join me in thanking them. Upcoming Terry Third Thursday programs, we've got a great fall planned. In September, we'll have Keith Marshall, who's the co-founder and CEO of the Players Lounge. In October, we'll have Julie Schertel, who's the president and CEO of Mativ. And then Ryan Oliver will be here in November. He's the managing director of the U.S. and Canada of Twitter Next, and so we're thrilled to have such a great lineup this fall. Yesterday on campus in Athens, we started our new fall semester, and so for Terry, that was welcoming about 9,000 undergrads and plus grad students back to campus. Campus is full with energy, and it's nice to have all of our students back. In September, we'll welcome our new class of executive MBA students here and our new class of professional MBA students. And then also our first class of the online MBA program. And that program is at capacity, and so is our executive MBA and almost our professional MBA. So it's great to be in high demand. We're all looking forward to the fall semester, all the great things that will happen this year. Hopefully another national championship in football as well. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Kathy Waller. Kathy is Executive Director of the Atlanta Committee for Progress. As a longtime executive of the Coca-Cola Company, Kathy knows the challenges that Atlantans face and what the city needs to thrive. When she joined the ACP in early 2022, she was determined to use her years of financial management and leadership to help the city and its residents reach a new next level. Founded in 2003 and governed by a board of business leaders from across the city, ACP provides leadership on key issues important to economic growth and inclusion for all citizens of Atlanta. Kathy retired in March of 2019 after 32 years with the Coca-Cola Company, where she served as the Chief Financial Officer as well as President of Enabling Services. In these roles, she led the company's global finance, technical, and shared service organizations and represented the company to investors, to lenders, and to rating agencies. In addition to her C-suite roles, Kathy was also the founding chair of the company's Women's Leadership Council. Kathy serves on a number of boards, including Delta Airlines, CGI Inc., Cadence Bank, Beyond Meat, the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, Spelman College, the University of Rochester, Girl Scouts of Greater Atlanta, Achieve Atlanta, the Woodruff Arts Center, and the EXCO Group. I don't think she has any hobbies, because how could you have with that many lists? So she is really busy, and we're thrilled to have her today. Kathy is a graduate at the University of Rochester with a BA as well as an MBA, and she's also a CPA. So please join me in welcoming Kathy Waller.
Can you hear me okay? Yep. Okay, good. Well, good morning. I am indeed busy, but I am also very happy. I am very fortunate to have found my happy place after retirement. Spent 32 wonderful years at the Coca-Cola Company. As you heard, I retired in March of 2019, and I got busy trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So I went on this learning journey, and I started talking to organizations and figuring out what they did, because I spent, this Coca-Cola Company, I spent most of my time outside of Atlanta, although I am a native of Atlanta. Let me be clear about that. And so I wanted to know catch up with what was going on in the city and understand who was doing what, and found that there were lots of organizations doing absolutely wonderful things. And you can see I got involved in a few of them. And then I did two things that were pivotal for me. While I was at Coca-Cola, because I was never in the country, for any consistency, I wasn't able to do Leadership Atlanta. So I did Leadership Atlanta. If you have not done that, I would highly encourage you to do that. It's a wonderful program. I thought I wouldn't have the opportunity anymore, but who knew? They allow you to go do it even if you're retired. So I did Leadership Atlanta. And while I was in Leadership Atlanta, this opportunity came up to work with the Atlanta Committee for Progress. And when the opportunity originally came up, I said, oh, you know, that's a cool job, but thanks. I've been retired for almost 3 years at that point. And all the recruiter heard was, that's a cool job. So, so be careful what you say to a recruiter. So, and I literally ran from the job for about 4 months. I mean, it kept coming back, and I talked to a number of people about this job. And finally, I said, okay, I've got to actually do something here. So I had a conversation with 2 people, Frank Blake and Ed Bastian. And Frank and Ed both said, for you, because they both know me pretty well, you need to talk to the chair of the committee and the mayor, because if it's not a real job for you, you can forget it. You're going to be totally frustrated. And so you need to understand what their focus is and what they want to do. So I said, okay, fine, that makes sense. And I really went to both of those meetings thinking, you know, I'm not going to take this job. The chair at that time was Ryan Marshall, who is the CEO of Pulte Group, Pulte Homes. Absolutely fantastic individual. And I found myself almost ready to sign on the dotted line. It's like, this is crazy. I'm not taking a job. And then I went to talk to the mayor. And I don't know how many of you all know Mayor Dickens. He was new to the job at the time. It was just January of last year, 22. And what a dynamic and amazing individual who really cares about the city, who is determined to make things happen for this city. So I left that meeting, and I went to my car, and I sat there and go, I am taking a job. This is crazy. And I took a job. And I could not be happier that I took this job. It is for a native of Atlanta who really cares about her city, whose significant other we went to high school together at Frederick Douglass High School. I, worked at the Coca-Cola Company. This is my perfect opportunity to give back to the city and get back to the people that I love. So that's my story. What you really came here to hear is the story of ACP, and so I will share that story. But yeah. So let me start with, these are the things I will go over, but let me start with a story about in 2003 and Mayor Shirley Franklin. So 2001, I'll step back, November 2001, Mayor Shirley Franklin. How many of you all were here in early 2000s? Okay, most of you. So she wins the election as mayor. She's the first woman mayor, and she hadn't been on city council. I mean, she's been behind the scenes working with Mayor Young and Mayor Jackson, and always behind the scenes. So she's the first female mayor. First time she's actually in front, in charge, and she's met with a series of problems. So in her words, there were no monthly financial reports being run. Operating data was unavailable. No one could tell her how many employees worked for the city. The water service was in chaos, with contractors threatening to stop work. Potholes were not being filled, and parks were not maintained. That's what she walked into as the new mayor of the city of Atlanta. She knew she had a budget deficit. She didn't know how much her budget deficit was. And she knew she had an aging sewer and water system that had to be repaired. So you walk in and you go, okay, now what do? I've got the job. It's terrible. Fortunately, a young partner at Bain came to see her and said, let us help you pro bono figure out what the problems are. Or do whatever it is you need us to do. So she says, I gave him the hardest problem I had, which was find out what my deficit is and help me fix it. And Peter Amon, the partner from Bain, did just that. He brought in a significant group of people who went back 20 years, through 20 years of budgets, to try to help her figure out what her real problem was. And he came back and said, best estimate at this point, 50 to 90 million is your budget deficit. They soon found out it was over 100 million. So she had to do some interesting things to start to immediately close her budget deficit. So she did have to figure out how many employees she had, and then she unfortunately had to lay some of her employees off. But the deficit was in interesting areas. It was like 30 million fuel, repair, insurance, litigation, debt service, and consultants. I mean, this is all public record. So 21 million trash and 911 services, overestimated hotel and motel revenue. 18 million workers' compensation, pensions, and salaries. 11 million IRS penalties, police overtime settlement, and 8 million for Underground Atlanta. To further put it into perspective, and again, this is her words. The city didn't know how many vehicles it owned or how many cell phones it owned. She found over 150 cell phones that were being used and that the city was paying for, and nobody could tell her who had the cell phones. So this is what this group of consultants helped her wrangle. And Peter came back with an interesting idea and said, you know, you've got some really big issues here. Why don't you let the business community help you? Why don't you get together a group of CEOs and let them kind of be your sounding board, your support system, your cheerleaders? And she said, okay, let's do it. And they gathered that first group together that started the Atlanta Committee for Progress. And they've been together ever since. Every mayor has seen value in keeping this group together. At that time, it was about 25, all CEOs of, and not just the largest corporations headquartered here in Atlanta, but some mid-size as well, because they needed kind of diversity of kind of size, thought, leadership, to be able to figure out how to fix the problems in a city this size with a lot of constituents, right? So Bain provided her this comprehensive plan, including the fact that she needed these leaders to help her influence a few people in state government and federal government because her water problem was about $4 billion. So she had, I mean, I can't even imagine being the mayor and him coming into that kind of, talk about a bad day. So they gave her 29 specific strategies for reinventing city government. And including, cutting the 1,100 people, she actually reduced her own salary. Because she said, if I'm gonna, slash the people, I need to cut my own salary. So she cut her own salary, $40,000 of her $157,000 salary. Yeah. But that's the kind of mayors we have had and we have that care that much about the city, that will do whatever it takes to make it work. So she asked this group of ACP members, these CEOs, to help her spur economic development in the city, to use their influence where appropriate, provide loaned executives, because she did not have, really, first of all, I'm not sure she knew exactly who she had with her at the city, but she certainly also slashed by 1,100 people. So she did not have the leadership in the right places to get some of these things done. So they gave her loaned executives to help her not only figure out how to fix some of these problems and do some of these things, but to help her run the city and find their successor, right? So for her, so that they put a good person in place to run the job when they went back to their companies. Now, I'm happy to say, after 8 years in office, she left the city in great shape. But it was not easy, as you can imagine, because she also had to raise taxes 50%. She had to raise sales tax. It was a tough time in Atlanta. And if any of y'all probably don't even remember that, how difficult it was, but it was a difficult time here in Atlanta. People were very angry. So these corporate leaders expanded eventually, and you'll see that the current membership is a little bit different than it was back then. So ACP is a public-private partnership. It advocates on behalf of the city. It uses its influence on behalf of the city. Its mission is very simple. It is basically to do what the mayor needs it to do. It's very different from other organizations in the city, because you could think of and people always confuse us with CAP, which is, so that Downtown Improvement District and Central Atlanta Progress. Those areas like Midtown Alliance and Buckhead Coalition, they are neighborhood focused. And so they are doing things that support the neighborhood in which they manage. ACP goes across the city, but only the city of Atlanta, not Metro Atlanta. So it's different from the Chamber, which does Metro Atlanta. ACP is for the city of Atlanta only. So we basically work with the mayor, and whatever the incoming mayor's priorities are, that's what ACP supports. Interestingly enough, as I've learned, as I took the job, and I started to try to find out, okay, so what do we really do? There's nothing written down about what ACP has done, because ACP as an entity doesn't really want to be known. I mean, how many of you know a little bit about ACP? I have one hand in the back, two hands, okay. So my next question, how many of you know a lot about ACP, but forget it. I only got two that know a little bit about ACP. The reason is because they don't want the credit. What they do is the mayor gets the credit for whatever ACP does because it's a mayor's initiative. So this group of CEOs and other academic and civic leaders come together just to support the city of Atlanta. So imagine that for a minute. These are very busy people. And so it was a group that, for me, made perfect sense, okay, that I participate with. So I am the executive director. My staff, my big staff, there are two of us, two of them. There's Brittany, who's also full-time with ACP, and then there is Sonia. So Bain did the original work that created ACP and has worked with the city for a very long time. They were there for the first probably 12 years. McKinsey now does the ACP project work. And so McKinsey provides a basically loaned person to me, to ACP, on a yearly basis, rotating basis. And so I'm now actually on the third one, because when I came in March 22, the first person ended in June, then I went a full year with one person, and now I'm just beginning with Sonia. So a young person within the McKinsey organization works with us, but that's not all McKinsey does. They bring a lot of resources to bear. The Tiffany Byrne, who is the Atlanta managing partner, David Dorton, who is a partner here in Atlanta, basically are at speed dial for us. So when we need research, McKinsey has done a lot of research. Generally, the research exists somewhere. When I need to know about benchmarking in other cities, McKinsey's right there to support us. They pull in whoever they need to pull in to help the city get the job done. So we're grateful for that pro bono support from them as well. But you see my ACP members. You see the companies that are represented. I mean, these are busy people. These are people who could be doing a lot of other things other than spending a quarter, a meeting a quarter, plus they support, like if we're looking for, if the city needs to hire, so the mayor came in, he needed to hire his cabinet. He needed to find people and really good people to come work for the city, because he can't do it all, so he really needs good people. That group of people, right, 6 or so of them for each interviewed people for the mayor. They didn't send a team from their offices to do it. They interviewed candidates for jobs for the city. this group of people works on task force for me. So usually it's around whatever their passion is that in one of the projects, but they also, people lead and work on, support each other on task force to deliver and solve problems for the city and work on initiatives. So give you an idea of the things that ACP has worked on in the past and currently works on. The Beltline. So, the Beltline, the idea of the Beltline came from a student at, I think it was Georgia Tech, right? But, and in the midst of all of those problems, Mayor Franklin said, we have to do some things that spur the economy, right? And so she said, this Beltline project is perfect. She cares about the parks. She cares about green space and residents and how they are, enjoy the city. And she wants to improve certain areas of the city. So she said she was going to do this Beltline project that this Georgia Tech student dreamed up. How do you get it done? You give it to ACP. ACP, in the background, set up the organization that would become the Beltline Partnership and Beltline Inc., two separate organizations, one governance, one running it. And they did the initial fundraising to get it on its feet and helped to set up the tax advantage district that funds it, has funded it over the years. So that's a big thing that they did. West Side Future Fund. The west side of Atlanta had not been invested in many years. The stadium was being built. Arthur Blank, member of ACP, made some promises in that community about helping to revitalize that community. In steps ACP, sets up a separate organization, West Side Future Fund, to run it, works on the task force to get it set up, supports it through board relationships. You trying to tell me I'm at time? No, okay. I talk too much, so let me speed it up. And West Side Future Fund is now fully developing the English Avenue, Vine City, North Side Drive area of the city. Those are, they've worked on lots of other projects, helping to secure the Martin Luther King papers. So as I mentioned, I was reading off the issues that caused the deficit that she had to deal with. One of them was the pension, right? They did a pension reform. So a group of the leaders, not their teams, the leaders worked on the City of Atlanta's pension problem and gave them suggested a way forward. I don't know how many of you remember, there was a lawsuit as a result of it. They supported that through that lawsuit, and the pension was reformed, and a 401k basically was kind of set up that instead of the pension plan that they originally had. They created an organization called Engage Ventures. Anybody heard of it? Nobody. Oh, okay, I got two people. So this was Kasim Reed, and it was founded by 10 leading Atlanta companies in partnership with Georgia Tech, ACP. And it's to support entrepreneurs and generate more high-tech jobs in Atlanta. It invests in startups that are selected into the program, connects these entrepreneurs with advisors, and gives entrepreneurs what they need most: market access and distribution. And they created the Center for Workforce Innovation, which is industry and community partners, City of Atlanta and ACP, created this with Atlanta Technical College, and which is basically is cultivating the next generation of skilled employees, because we need skilled workers. So ACP is working with another thing ACP set up, the Atlanta College and Career Academy, which takes high school students, introduces them to vocational trades, and helps them to decide what they want to do after high school. So they do a lot of different things that you all never knew about and you all never heard of, and for some of them. But the thing I liked most about that group is not only an amazing group of people to work with, but it's also a group of people who don't want credit. And I love the fact that they don't need to be in the limelight. They've got great jobs, they're CEOs of these companies, and so they've got all the credit they need. They don't need to take credit for doing wonderful things for the city behind the scenes. Right? So how does it work? Well, mayor, so for me, it was great, new mayor coming in. I'm starting with him. I meet with him, and he tells me what his priorities are, what he wants to get done. Yeah. So I go back basically and say to my executive committee, these are the things that we want to work on, he wants to work on. Fortunately, it was a continuation of things slightly differently, but mostly what we've already been working on. And then we talk about how we're going to get those things done. There's a meeting quarterly, and it's the mayor's meeting with ACP. Mayor comes in, talks about what's going on with the city, what he needs, how, and then it's between the two of us, we talk about the initiatives that we are doing together. And the mayor asks for whatever additional support he needs at that meeting. The beauty of that meeting for me is that it's a dialogue. This year we started a dinner the night before, and that's helped the ACP members, because you remember we went through COVID. Like everybody else with COVID, they were on screen, like on Zoom, and some of them, and there was turnover in the ranks of the CEOs, and so some of them didn't know each other that well. So these dinners have gotten them to get to know each other better again, and creates this sense of camaraderie, if you will, and allows them, so that conversation with the mayor then flows much more easily. And it's a two-way street. So they challenge him on some things. You might imagine all mayors don't like being challenged, but they're respectful, as respectful as they can be, and they're pushed back, so it can get tense in the room, but they come out with the right kind of decision and the way forward. And so that's basically the process that we go through. We listen to the mayor, he tells us what he needs, we figure out what we can do to support him. So what are our priorities this year? Well, as you may have heard, this is the year of the youth. The mayor declared 2023 the year of the youth and said that he was starting with early childhood development and going through to the Center for Workforce Innovation, right? Making sure that his goal is to make sure that Atlanta is a great place to raise a child. That's his ultimate goal. What you may not have known, and what I didn't know until I had to start doing the research, in the years 0 to 4, if a child is not appropriately stimulated, the cells, the neurons that are the connections in the brain actually die. And that they can never make that deficit up. So if you think about the families that have, that are working families, they maybe have more than one job. When they get home from work, the last thing they do is read to their children or talk about colors or numbers or things like that. So most kids need to be, when the ages of 0 to 4, someplace where they can get that stimulation for their brains. And so the mayor in early childhood development wants to make sure that there are enough childhood development centers around and available so that kids can get that stimulation, so that when they go to school, they are not falling behind. They are able to read at the appropriate time. They stay in school. Because the other thing that happens when they are behind, they lose hope on, they know they're failing, often don't complete school, often have other mortality issues that cause them to be overweight, have diseases, et cetera, that, and then their lives are totally different. So you've got to change the trajectory of that. To do that, you got to start at ages 0 to 4. And this is a science. You can look this science up too. All this is public knowledge. You can look this up as well because there's been a lot of studies. The study I used for ACP came out of Harvard to help them understand this problem. We decided as an organization to help the mayor raise the $20 million he needed to get this started. Now, it's going to take a lot more money, the city of Atlanta, but he wanted to put in $20 million to get it going, and ACP helped him to get to that $20 million total so that we could get this off the ground. Others are helping certainly. Foundations are helping, Rotary's helping, because this is incredibly important for the city. And hopefully some of your companies are engaged in this enterprise as well. Homelessness. What I didn't know, what I learned, is Chris Womack, who at that time was at Georgia Power, he's now at the Southern Company, is really passionate about solving this homelessness problem in the city of Atlanta. Since COVID, it's gotten worse. As you might have recognized, rents are going up. There is an affordable housing problem in Atlanta, just like every place else. And as a result of that, people are getting evicted because landlords can raise the rent and get a lot more money for their units. And so they're just throwing people out. So the problem of homelessness is getting worse. Now, as I started getting into this, again, amazing thing about this job is I'm getting into things I never would have gotten into and talking to people I never would have talked to before because we just didn't run in the same circles. And I'm loving that part of this job. But, you know, a lot of people think somebody did something to cause them to be homeless. Well, what they did was they didn't make enough money, right? That was their, you know, big sin, that they did not make enough money. So we need to fix a few things. One is that we need a livable wage for people. And that goes up all the time, as you know, because, again, I don't know if you've tried to rent someplace lately or tried to even buy someplace lately, there are a lot of speculators in here buying the properties out from under you, coming in with a cash offer, et cetera. When Microsoft announced that 90-acre campus off of Hollowell, immediately that area, which is where the Westside Future Fund works, the prices skyrocketed, went up immediately 30%. And so now, Westside Future Fund, trying to revitalize that area, trying to buy properties and, you know, rebuild, had to pay $150,000 for basically what technically you could call a house, but it was basically, you know, some planks standing up, holding each other up, basically. And they have to pay $150,000 to buy that now because speculators came in and the values went up. So we've got a significant problem here on homelessness that we need to solve. Chris Womack is all over that. Workforce development, we had the Center for Workforce Innovation. We also work with ATC, work with the high schools, work with others, Goodwill, et cetera, to focus on how we get more people skilled and get more people working in great paying jobs. Affordable housing, as I said, we have a terrible affordable housing problem here that we have to do something about. Matt Bronfman, Jamestown, Ponce City Market, Matt Bronfman is very focused on this. He's focused in an interesting way. He's focused on how the city helps people get permits and things like that. So he wants the city to run more efficiently from that perspective. Any of you all that have tried to get a permit lately probably should send him flowers or a nice note. He's made a significant difference and is continuing to improve that. We also got to figure out, the mayor has an initiative that he wants to build 20,000 units of affordable housing by 2030. That is not enough, people. So we've got to figure out how to multiply that. But that's what he wants to build. That's what he's agreed to build. We're trying to make that, you know, 3 times that many. But it's hard to do that because it's just not that, you can't build that fast. And the city owns a lot of land. So he'll start with land that the city already owns or do land swaps with people to get land that is better positioned. But he will then use that land to build on so that he can keep it affordable, right? Because if you don't have to buy the land, you can, and you just then need the contractor to come in and build at cost, right? Then it makes it a lot more affordable. And affordability, if I asked any of you in this room to define affordability, every one of you would have a different definition of affordability because it's truly based on your ability to afford it. So if you think about, you're only supposed to pay 30%, at least today, 30% of your gross income in rent or your mortgage. That means that for somebody who makes $20,000 or less, that's not a lot of money that they can afford to pay to live. And if they've got a family, that's only work. That gets worse. So we've got to build things that are multifamily structures. But the other side of that is to build wealth, you really need to have a house. You really need to have invested in a house that's going to generate money for you to then grow that so you have generational wealth. So we have to also create standalone housing units that are affordable. There are a few builders out there that do that. Most of our builders don't work in that level of housing. But my ACP members will behind the scenes work on that level of housing to make sure that we have various levels of housing at various levels of affordability. You may never hear about the projects that they're doing. It won't be under their companies' names, perhaps, but it will be them behind the scenes. I don't know, I think I'm running low on time, but no, I'm good. Because if you've got questions, I'm happy to take your questions as well, because I want time to open it up for questions. So we're making progress. We've got, I can't see that, so I need to make sure that I'm telling you the truth here. So making up stuff because I'm standing here. On his early childhood development, he wants to improve 121 child care centers. We are putting up child care centers. We're getting a lot of help from the YMCA. The YMCA runs child care centers. They have a great program. Others, Brightwell. There are lots of vendors in the city. They just need to put them in different places that are accessible to more people, and so that's what we're working on. Young kids today, if they don't see something, it's hard to imagine it, right? How do you just know you want to grow up to be something if you have no idea it even exists? So we're trying to expose them to things that they haven't seen. So this summer, the mayor also has a program to hire 3,000 youth for the summer. In addition, we worked with the Boys and Girls Clubs to take them to our ACP members' offices so they could see the offices, they could see jobs, they could see what they could potentially do if they stayed in school, they worked hard, they got their degrees. And that program was a big hit with the kids. We work with Partners for Home, the city's continuum of care on homelessness. We work with, there are a lot of agencies, folks, that work on homelessness. And my biggest problem is these agencies do a wonderful job, but they don't up to scale, right? So we look for the ones that can scale, that can do this great job for more people, and we try to help them grow. We also would like some of them to work together to kind of reduce the peanut butter spread of the money. Atlanta is a very generous city. They are, your companies give a lot of money in support of this city. It's not working well right now because of how it's spread. We need to do something about that and start tackling problems, get one problem solved, then go tackle another one, et cetera. So we're working on how we can get people to work together so we can do that. Talked about affordable housing. And the last thing I want to talk about is neighborhood revitalization. So the mayor came to me this year and said, look, all the things that we're doing really fit under an umbrella, and I want to think about it in a bigger way. I want to take 6 neighborhoods plus downtown, and over the next several years, past my administration, these neighborhoods have not been invested in years. I want somebody to invest in these neighborhoods. I want us to make sure that soup to nuts. So it's the housing, it's making sure that there's transportation in these neighborhoods, it's making sure that there's people have access to good jobs, they're safer. It is soup to nuts. Kids have a good school to go to in these neighborhoods, and so that they have a stable home life. He can impact this generation, but he can really impact the next generation and help them to have a different life and different outcomes. And so I said, wow, that sounds really big. Really? What do you? So we got some other people together and started thinking about it. And so we are setting up this neighborhood revitalization program. It's going to be set up very similar to the Beltline. So the Beltline was set up so that regardless of who the mayor is, there have been several mayors after Mayor Franklin, it will continue. And it's not something the mayor can actually easily go in and interfere with. It has its own governance structure. It has its own board. And so we're setting this revitalization program up similarly so that it will, because it needs to run for probably longer than the Beltline. It's probably a 20, 30-year project. And it's, to do this though, in the right way, it needs to be governed appropriately because it's got to raise a lot of money and people need to be comfortable about how the money is being spent and where the money is going. So we are setting it up. ACP is setting it up that way. There's a task force for this one run by Helene Gale from Spelman College and Marty Flanagan, recently retired from Invesco, and another group of 6 ACP members who will focus their efforts on getting this set up and getting the governance structure in place, determining that board, who's on that board, and how this will run, and doing the initial fundraise for this initiative, very similar to the way they did with the Beltline. It's an ambitious program. The neighborhoods are, 2 of them are already in process. West Side Future Fund, Vine City, English Avenue area, Grove Park. And then the third one is West Hollowell, which is, so think of the entire Hollowell corridor. That's 3. Campbellton Road is 2 of the neighborhoods, because that whole corridor. And then I'm blanking out on the name. I'll think of it in a minute. It's on them. But Forest Cove, where the area that was in. So, and then downtown. Now downtown has a different problem. As people are not in the office anymore, those buildings are going to start to devalue, which is going to cause the city a different problem. So if that happens, if people continue to stay out of the office, and people aren't going to re-up their office space, or they're going to lose that office space, we could turn those into mixed-use buildings, right? It'd be an interesting thing to do, but some of them, like 2 Peachtree, has already been purchased for that purpose. It will be a mixed-use building. Today, it is truly an office building. When you walk in there, you go, you're going to turn this into housing, really? But as you know, some of you may be architects in this room. Amazing things can happen when you put some architects in a room and give them a pencil and a piece of paper. And so we'll see downtown hopefully revitalized over the next few years. But again, this is a very long-term project anyway, so I think that's it for me. I'm going to take questions on this. I can talk for a long time on this. I have to, and in my head I'm going, tell them this, tell them that. No, you don't have time to tell them this, no, that. So I'll take questions, and I may tell you a few other things as I'm thinking about it. I really do love this job. I just want to tell you, do I seem excited? So.
I
Yes.
saw Cousins was one of the sponsors, and I've seen just very briefly the documentary about the East Lake project. Is that, when they revitalized the East Lake area, was that considered a success, or were there unintended consequences? I'm just interested in your viewpoint from where that was clearly an objective to revitalize a neighborhood.
That's a great question. Depends on who you talk to as how successful or not they say that project was. I will tell you, my perspective, the intent was good. It missed the mark in a lot of ways. And we learned from that and fixed part of that with the West Side Future Fund. The biggest issue that happened with East Lake was that when property values went up, people couldn't afford to stay there. And so they had to sell. And so the people that they went in to initially help are not the people who live there now, right? But they did revitalize the school system. They did some wonderful things, but they didn't exactly, meet their goal. West Side Future Fund now comes along, and they learned from that, and they created a tax fund so that if you were in that area already, and as a result of their efforts and things, if the tax base went up on you, your taxes were capped. And there's a fund that pays that incremental difference for you. So they learned from that to fix the West Side Future Fund, but yeah, I think they missed the mark. Thanks for the question. Yeah. Yes?
That was ACP funded.
Okay. They pay for the privilege of helping the mayor. They're dues, basically, and they are as a scale, depending on the size revenues of the company. And so they pay anywhere from $25,000 to $65,000 a year to be a member. And except for the colleges don't pay, but the corporations pay. Yeah. And that just basically supports, some of the projects that we do in a small way. We do some funding from that. We help with T-SPLOST through that funding, and the salaries and things like that. But the other projects, as these companies and their foundations, et cetera, they actually put additional money in to fund a lot of these projects. That's on top of the dues that they pay. But yeah, they pay for the privilege of working for the mayor.
Yes. So for the companies involved, is it rotating or they're there until perpetuity, or and then also how can other companies get involved in the?
So yeah, we welcome involvement. Anybody can be involved. The mayor would love your involvement. The companies, some companies have been there from the beginning. Others have rotated in and out. If you are not coming and participating in meetings, if you're not joining the task force and lending your support, there is a conversation that's had about whether this is the right time for you to be part of this group or not. But for the most part, if you're and as successive CEOs come in, there are different levels of support that they feel for the city, right? And so they may choose to not. If a different CEO comes in, they may choose to step out while that CEO doesn't. Maybe is traveling all the time, can't be involved, whatever, right? There are reasons why some may step out. So some have stepped out over time, some have come back over time, different CEOs. So it's really, because it's your CEO's time that's being used pretty much, as well as the company's money, it's a person by person decision as to how you're going to spend your time, and what your company needs at that time. Yeah. Yes?
Do other cities have similar organizations, or is this unique to Atlanta?
So what I've found is that some other cities, not most, but a few other cities have some organizations that are run more like a chamber type thing that helps the city. So we have a metro chamber, and some cities have organizations that look like a city chamber kind of thing. We are fairly unique in the way we run our structure, and even the cities that have something, there may be 4 or 5 others that have it. I don't know why everybody doesn't have it. It's just such a great system, but not many have it. Yes?
What are some challenges that you foresee coming with the West Side project, and how do you see overcoming those challenges?
So West Side Future Fund so the way they set themselves up was very interesting. Basically, companies, primarily ACP companies, use their balance sheet. And what I mean by that is Coca-Cola. I was at Coca-Cola at the time. I was approached by West Side Future Fund with a proposal to lend them $20 million that I would get back. I'd get that principal back. I could get some interest, which I knew I was going to forgive. And they went to other companies. So Delta put in, Home Depot, ACP companies, basically, you lent them the money to buy the properties that they needed to fix, right? They've basically bought all the properties now. And philanthropy is what they use to fix the properties or to rebuild. They need about $55 million in philanthropy to finish the play on the West Side. So it's how fast can they raise that $55 million is the question. Otherwise, they've done the hard part. They've gained the trust of people who lived there, who questioned why they were there, trying to help them, which was really hard. That took several years to gain trust. They've bought all the properties. Now they're spending a lot of money to, they haven't fixed the properties yet and haven't sold them off. They are spending a lot of money to protect the properties. So they have, basically to keep the property up, they have to maintain it, cut the grass, and et cetera. And then they have to have, people who come and monitor and make sure that squatters aren't in the property or whatever. So they're spending a lot of money doing that. So they really need to turn these properties as soon as they can. So it's a matter of time. How fast can they do that? But that depends on how fast they can raise that $55 million. Anybody got $55 million to help us? Have to ask. Yes?
Does ACP work with Habitat at all?
ACP works with everybody. Yeah, I mean, literally, we work with everybody. But they are. And West Side Future Fund, Habitat builds for West Side Future Fund, right? Habitat is one of those that can build at any scale. And so they can build for the folks who need the deep affordability, deep affordability, 30% AMI kind of thing. So yeah, they do a lot of building for us. So yeah, we work with lots of people. You know, we'll work with you. Would you like us to work with you? Yes.
Share a little bit more about your engagement with the universities, and in particular, are there any initiatives to get students involved or any education for the next level of leaders that are going to come through and help us address these problems?
So your universities do a lot of research. They know a lot about cities and urban areas and how things should be run, et cetera. So we use all of that in Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Spelman, for sure. And so yeah, and so they put students on projects for us. Students sign up for projects and help us with various things. Not enough of that. We need to do more of that. They did more in the past as they were trying to figure out how to solve the problem. But they certainly, this neighborhood revitalization, we will use the colleges to help us figure out certain things in the neighborhoods. Because they've already done a lot of the research, for one thing, and then they've got students who love projects like this. Yeah, so thank you. No more questions? You guys just want to go back to work? Is that what Thomasville Heights. That was the other one. That was going to bug me until I remembered.
Kathy, thank you for being with us today and for all your great work for the city of Atlanta. I've got a nice red and black commemorative item for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If we have not validated your parking, we would love to cover your parking today. You can pick up a parking validation on your way out. Thanks all of you for your support today and for this series. Hope everybody has a great August, and go Dogs.